Welcome to the Off Tackle with John Fina show on the Overreaction Sports Network.
Hey, Bills Mafia. Welcome into the Sahlen's Off Tackle Show with John Fina, presented by FanDuel. Happy to have you all here. Jerry Ostrowski co-hosting with me. We're going to take some time and break down a little bit that first preseason game that if you went, you were a little tortured by the sun. And if you didn't, hopefully you stayed around and watched the entirety of the game because there were some fun things to see, both from the Bills and from the Giants if you happen to be a New Jersey fan. But again, thanks for joining me. It's the Sahlen's Off Tackle Show with John Fina, presented by FanDuel. Jerry and I had the opportunity to watch most of the game together yesterday in the air conditioning. Jerry, thanks for joining me today, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing good, John. Obviously, we've been up here for the week. We've got a big day, big night tonight at the Kelly Gala. Then tomorrow, obviously, Jim Kelly's golf tournament, which we always look forward to. Lots of, they consider us the celebs, I guess, or stars of this thing. I don't think so. The people that come to this event, they're much more glorious to watch than, say, you and I, if you know what I'm getting at. This is one of the premier golf tournaments around. Jim has done an unreal job for years. Very, very entertaining. If you leave this tournament hungry or a bit parched, that is your fault, because there are multiple opportunities to enjoy some refreshments. So we're looking forward to it. Obviously, get to see old friends. But yeah, it was great being at the game with you this weekend. Saw a lot of really good things, and just kind of, wanted your take on how you saw this game this weekend. Obviously, first preseason game of the year, last preseason game ever at Highmark Field, and just your comments and thoughts on the game.
Yeah, terrific. But before I do that, and I got to talk about the scandal, of course. Before I get to the scandal real quick, prayers up for Jim and Jill and their grandchild. We're hoping that full recovery and great health for that baby, just as we do for all little babies born today and yesterday and tomorrow. The scandal is played golf with Jerry 3 days in a row. And if you don't know, Jerry's an outstanding golfer, and he's got a beautiful swing, smooth, nice short swing, great contact. I'm a terrible golfer. And my good friend Jerry waits, 42 holes to give me a little bit of swing advice. I'm like, where you been? He's like, well, I don't know if you like coaching. I'm like, bro, I'm like you. I'm an offensive lineman. That's all we've been coached within an inch of our life. Coach me, coach me. So that's the scandal for the week. I know, not too thrilling. When it comes to the Bills game, I'd have to say, they played it a little bit like Jerry's swing, nice and conservative, smooth, not trying to bend it around a tree, not trying to slice it around and work it up to the green. Just a smart, simple approach to the game where they can get valuable insights with what they decided to do. And for me, that's the point of these games. There's so much talent on the Bills roster, and it's so deep that if you start throwing all kinds of crazy stuff, like, what are you really assessing? So I think the vanilla approach to it gives you the opportunity, and it's a fair opportunity and a fair shake to the young guys who finally make it onto the field.
Exactly. I think people get a little confused about these preseason games, especially the first one. You're not going to see the Buffalo Bills come out there and run their premier pressure package or their offensive plays or the things that they want to do during the season to have success. Especially this first game, it's about the lights getting turned on and seeing what the guys on your team will do in a competition situation. This is much more. These preseason games, especially the first couple, are they're more about the individual than they are the team. You want to see these guys. I mean, the first chance to compete against another jersey, the first chance to play in an NFL football game, and all of those things. So, it's hard because as a fan, you're antsy, especially Bills fans. We've been on the cusp for quite some time. But I think that if you're trying to judge a season based off of the first preseason game of the year in 98, 100 and some degree heat, you're being a little bit silly. I mean, this is not about throwing out everything you're going to do during the year. You want to see your guys compete, especially the ones you drafted, and then go watch the tape and adjust and go from there.
Yeah, and consider this, Jerry. A lot of these guys, this is their first NFL football game. I mean, it's enough weight and excitement on you walking into the locker room that morning, and you're pulling on an NFL uniform. And I don't care who these guys are. Every last one of them went and checked themselves out in the mirror, and they're like, "Oh my God, I got to pinch myself. I'm in an NFL locker room," and that's a lot. I mean, you could get rid of all your testosterone, all your energy just by freaking out about the fact that you're here. So keeping it vanilla. And I think specifically, Jerry, to the defense, you want to keep it vanilla. We have a lot of secondary people that we want to see what they can do in the various types of coverages that are just basic coverages. If you start bringing guys from the front six and you're putting a high pressure on and you're locking guys down in a man-to-man situation, which we don't do a lot of, well, I don't see the upside in that. Trey White needs the work. All the younger cornerbacks need the work. You want guys to understand the base defense that you're going to play what, Jerry, 80% of the time?
Right.
So no point in coming out and doing something silly.
I think prime example would be Landon Jackson. He caught a lot of strays from this first preseason game. A lot of people felt he didn't play well, wasn't showing up on film and those types of things. Going back to Landon Jackson, if you know the player, you know he's got ability, you know he has the size and everything else to be good in the National Football League. But if you know how he is, you know what he's like as a player, he's one of those guys that's an amp guy. He gets amped up, he gets nerved up, he's wanting to go. And it doesn't shock me that in the first preseason game, he gets caught up in the game itself, and then you forget about your techniques. You forget about the things that you are supposed to do. And it has nothing to do with the fact that he was drafted too high or whatever. He's going to be a fine player for the Buffalo Bills. It's his first NFL game. So there's got to be some grace amongst evaluators and the fan base and those types of things. The thing that was good to me anyway, especially with all the young kids, John, and the draftable players, none of them walked out there and I said, man, this is too big for them. It's, you can see that this is a little bit much. Every one of them seamlessly fit right in. Maybe didn't make it, all the plays we wanted them to make, but they're going to be fine. It's a good group. I think they Bean did a wonderful job with that D-line, getting it up to speed. I think they're going to be good. Everything else will fall into place. Like you said, Trey White needs more reps just because he hasn't had much lately, and yep. It's just it's hard for me sometimes to get caught up in the emotion of the evaluation of a first preseason game, because some people, man, it's like, we're right back to where we were. It's like, guys, just relax. Relax.
That's when I go have a beer with somebody else. Jerry, you brought up a good point, and it's all on the coaching staff on a very mature and successful team that when these young guys came in and maybe they played with their pad level too high, they got away from the things that they've been learning for the past, 4 to 6 weeks. When they come into that meeting room, laugh it up a little bit. And, the next time that those guys come to the locker room, they get to say to themselves, I've been here before. So you can save a little bit of that adrenaline. You can save a little bit of that testosterone. You can ground yourself. You can learn from real film where you're playing against a guy that you haven't seen before. So it's a learning process. Everybody has their own timeline. For one, I felt like, and much like you did, guys up front don't take it off in the preseason. So as offensive linemen, I felt like I was amped up every year to not just secure my position, but know that the guy across from me is trying to win a job or hold a job. And nowhere else do you get exposed so quickly and so dramatically as you do up front. And I could tell you flat out that I went into one preseason game kind of like mentally not ready because I was like, well, I'm kind of here. And that was unpleasant. I got a little bit of whipped and I was like, you know what? I don't want to do that again. So you got to mentally be right for the young guys. They don't know what mentally right is yet, but they go through a couple preseason games and it helps them get there.
And the other thing is this, and I don't think people understand this, and John will tell you this as well. How many times, John, did we stop practice? Okay, stop what we were doing 2 days before a preseason game and just put in a game plan for who we were playing in the preseason. How many times did we get a folder of plays and situations, and this is what they're going to do on third and whatever, and this is what they're going to do on second? We don't. And if you watch the game this weekend, that's what you saw. You saw you saw Reggie Gilliam out there. Hell, they ran power. They haven't ran power in I don't know how long. They ran power this
Reggie
weekend.
Gilliam caught a ball.
Right. Reggie Gilliam caught a ball. I mean, so really these first couple games, especially Josh isn't playing. Now, granted, they did play some of the starters for at least the first quarter. I thought they did a good job with that defensive line rotation. Obviously, some of the offensive linemen played quite a bit early. But this is about just shaking the rust off, letting those rookies, especially, the defensive and offensive linemen, you can always remember the first time you come out of your stance and when an NFL quality defensive lineman moves, it's different. Or the first time you come off the ball as a rookie defensive lineman and that offensive lineman that's been playing 4 or 5 years puts his hands in your chest. It's a different feeling. It's a different experience. That's what this game was about more than scheming up an opponent that you aren't going to play and really don't care about.
Yeah, and I'll add a couple of things to that, Jerry, and that was very well said. The mental state of the Giants team is far different than the Buffalo Bills, right? Dable right now, I don't care what you say, he's on a hot seat somewhere. I mean, he might be dancing on top of hot plates for all we know, but they haven't been very good for the past 3 years. And they approach the preseason with an entirely different mentality than the Bills, right? Bills are like, let's go vanilla. Let's get out of here with no injuries. Let's move on. Whereas the Giants are like, well, we still don't know who our quarterback is. We've been terrible most recently. So there's a level of expectation for those players and their effort level that's totally different than ours. And what happens to the team that's coming in with a more established culture, better winning record, the whole bit, and a very vanilla approach to things, I know, they probably didn't watch much film. They may have scouted just a little bit, and that would have been offensive linemen just like, I don't know what we're getting ourselves into.
Right.
But then you come up with the expectation to run zone or power against a particular front, and you don't see it. And then you quick have to do the machinations of, all right, now we're going to this combination block and that combination block. And that doesn't really bode well for the running game. It doesn't bode well for, any true type of success except showing what's your athletic ability. Do you know the plays and can you react?
And I think you also have to look at across the league, right? You saw a lot of like Jackson Dart. You saw a lot of these rookie quarterbacks. Shadur Sanders did it with Cleveland. A lot of these rookie quarterbacks played well their first game, right? Well, why did they play well? Well, they've got ability. But if you watch what the Bills did, you watch what, the Carolina Panthers did, it wasn't like they had some specific game plan in. It wasn't like they studied, the Bills will study a quarterback, see what he does, and they'll run formations and coverages and things of that nature to force the football to a certain area that they know that's where the ball is going to go by studying the Giants and how they read progressions. None of that was done. None of that was done because, you don't have the time and you really don't need to do it because, again, this is about individual performances and seeing how guys compete with the lights come on. Now, granted, as they go on in the preseason, they're back at Orchard Park, at One Bills Drive. Maybe they watch a little more film as they move on in the preseason. Obviously, they'll have a little bit more intel on the Bears this week because they're flying to Chicago or wherever the Bears are to practice against the Bears before they play them in the preseason. So they'll have a little better understanding of what the Bears do in certain looks, how the Bears players are playing in certain looks. So it'll be a little different. And I think you should, see the Bills perform a little bit better. But to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say, with this whole game, I just can't get there, man. I just can't get there. I can't get excited about it. I appreciate those that do get excited. I mean, fandom is strong, but it's just the way it is.
Yep. And once again, everybody, thanks for tuning into the Sahlen's Off Tackle Show with John Fina, presented by FanDuel. Sahlen's, Jerry O, is a 150-year-old, 5-generation family business from Buffalo, New York that turns out the best hot dogs. And the good news for you in Tulsa and me in Tucson is Sahlen's ships anywhere. That's Sahlen.com, and you can get your favorite hot dog anywhere in the United States of America, probably overseas, and likely even Latvia. So if you want a great quality hot dog, whether you want a basic dog, a Chicago dog, a chili cheese dog, if you want a kraut dog and you want it to be the best dog that you can get, then start with Sahlen. High quality hot dogs from Buffalo, New York. Wonderful family, wonderful community supporters. Go to Sahlen.com. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Jerry, you and I, we're kind of like a couple of old saws here. We're trying to tell everybody, listen, we know what it's like. Don't worry about it, this and that. We sound like the curmudgeonly. Let's talk about some of the things that the Bills did well, right? And I'm going to start it, and I want your comment on these two things. Number one, I think the Bills drafted well. And number two, what's your most exciting two position group takeaway? And we'll kind of discuss both of those. But I think they drafted particularly well this year.
No, I think they did. And I think you see that especially on the defensive side of the ball, because that's where they spent most of their draft picks. I think that defensive line room has gotten significantly better. And let's not forget about the two guys we won't have for the first 6 games. And it's sad because I saw a lot of really, really good things out of Michael Hoyt. And if you watch Michael Hoyt and just his mannerisms, and John and I were joking about it while we were watching the game, he's that dude that you can tell football is his life. That's what he is about. He's going to play football until they tell him he can't play anymore. Hell, he might go to the Arena League if he had to. He's just going to play until he can't play anymore. And then after that, he's going to coach. So, I mean, it was refreshing watching him. I thought he was great. He did a lot of really good stuff out of a 2-point stance, got some pressures, and played really, really well. And then, of course, Larry Ogunjobi, given depth on the inside, provides a veteran presence in there against the run, and then also, provides some pass rush. So I think defensively, the defensive line showed out. And I'm going to have to talk about Deion Walker. I really am. He was impressive.
He was.
For being such a big man, he does have some lateral movement. And what's funny about Deion, John, is you think, and you understand this, as an O-lineman, you get these big, huge, tall guys. Man, you got to jump set them, right? You got to get your hands on them. You got to shut them down before they get that head of steam. Well, he's got that little lateral swim. You come out low to jump set, he's going to swim past you and get some pressure. And even if he does get just a couple yards behind the line of scrimmage, his wingspan is so massive, he can alter passing lanes. So I thought he was well. I thought on that touchdown pass, if you watch that touchdown pass by Dart, TJ Sanders had a tremendous rush and actually hit the quarterback right before he threw the ball. I think he's as advertised. Again, Landon Jackson, I think, will be fine. I think he was way amped up. But I love that defensive line area in the draft. And then also some of the guys that were picked in the secondary showed up. I thought Jordan Hancock played really, really well. He had that one interception taken away by a penalty, but he was there. I think he had 3 tackles on the game and how much time he played, which was good. So, yeah, I think defensively, especially in the draft, those guys showed up. They showed up on film, and you can only build off of that, which is exciting.
Yeah, I love your Hancock reference because, coming from Ohio State, very aggressive downhill type of secondary. And even if we don't play that style when it's asked of you, you have to have that confidence, and you can't fake that. You can't just generate that on a play. So I definitely agree with you on that. And when I look into the interior specifically, it's a hard way to pick, the 4 or 5 guys that you need to keep on this roster because their skill sets are very different. I'd say the 2 closest skill sets might be Sanders and Carter. But beyond that, you get Deion Walker, you get Ogunjobi, you get Ed Oliver, you get Daquan Jones. They're all varying. I know you get a 1 and a 3 technique. But, I mean, woe to anybody who has to, get down to the wire and decide how to move these pieces around at the risk of losing people. The good news is obviously we won't lose Hoyt and Ogunjobi. Develop some other guys, but it's going to be hard. In my opinion, that's the hardest job for this organization right now, that position group.
The other area that was interesting was obviously, and I do want to talk a little bit about Andreessen at some point because he reminds me of somebody and I want to talk about it. But the other area that was interesting was the wide receiver group. Obviously, Curtis Samuel not playing. We've got some injuries there. Khalil hurt. Again, Shaver shows up, makes some big catches. And the thing that he brings to this football team that those other guys that aren't playing can't is the fact he's 6'4", 212 pounds. He is a big physical receiver. There's going to be some interesting decisions that are going to have to be made in that room. I've always felt like you can't keep Samuels and Moore. I think they're too similar, especially with Khalil Shakir. You can't keep both. I think it's one or the other. Obviously, Keon's not going anywhere. So how do they handle that room with the emergence of Shavers? And I think that the longer this Curtis Samuel injury situation continues to linger, that you might possibly see some IR situations come up, especially with him. If you put him on the IR to where he's unavailable for 6 weeks or so, then when you have to make some roster decisions based on the return of Hoyt and Ogunjobi, then maybe you have enough work there where, if Shavers makes the initial roster, does he stay after week 6? Do you move somebody else? Do you bring Samuels back? So there's some things are going to have to be done at that wide receiver spot, especially with Samuels and the cap consideration you have to look at. If you just release him outright, you're going to have to pay too much money. So, ideally a trade would be what you want to do, but who's going to trade for a guy that hasn't participated and is hurt? So now you start looking at IR possibilities. So that's going to be something to look at as well.
Yeah, look, I love the guy, right? But the injury issue is the big deal, right? The best availability is availability, right? That's your best football players, the ones that can step between the lines and play. And he's consistently or inconsistently been available. And I think you don't want to start the season that way. And to me, that's the defining decision. You can like anybody you want, but when it comes down to it, you just have to decide who's going to be on the field when we want them. And I love the Terrell Shavers possibility. In my opinion, that is the second hardest room to pick on the field, right? D-line, and then followed by wide receivers. You always want to see a new guy get his chance, or a guy that's been around, who's paid his dues, who's finally going to get his chance. So Shavers does look great in that regard. Jerry, I don't know. I still like Elijah Moore and Shakir together. I think that Curtis Samuel somehow ends up being that IR guy, and then you kind of kick the can down the road and deal with the problem later as cheaply and best as you can.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing that's exciting about Shavers is he's a guy that has been developed. I think this is his third year in the program. I mean, obviously been a practice squad guy, and now he's back, and the things are starting to click and happen. I can appreciate a guy that spent some time on the practice squad that gets an opportunity and makes it. It's refreshing to see. I think that's what football is about developing your own. And to stay in that realm of things and to kind of switch back to the defensive side of the ball, you're seeing that with Joe Andreessen. I mean, this is a guy that wasn't drafted. He came in on a free agent tryout. They end up keeping him, and he has 4 tackles, one assisted this weekend, plays great football, has the green dot. He's a starting middle linebacker when the game starts. He's got the green dot on his helmet. He's leading the defense, lining them up. He reminds me a lot of that Zach Thomas, London Fletcher type middle linebacker, which is different than Terrell Bernard. I mean, Terrell Bernard's a smaller guy too, but he's a slasher. He's a downhill guy and makes big plays behind the line of scrimmage. I think Joe plays it a little more traditional. He can get to the edge of blocks, doesn't take blocks head on, and has a way of fitting and making plays. So that's been exciting to see, is that it wasn't just a feel-good story last year, that he actually is a very, very good football player and a viable candidate to get a lot of snaps on this team. And again, that is your scouting department doing their job, and then you as a staff doing your job developing young talent. And I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, terrific comment. There was a point in the game yesterday, we'd watched Milano early, and Milano looks fantastic right now.
Oh, man.
Milano, Williams, Bernard. I mean, that's enough for me, as a starting rotational 3. And then it was a little bit later in the game, and I was having fun, and at the game, so I was paying attention, but I wasn't watching, who was subbing in and out.
Right.
And there was a point there, and I think it was in the second quarter. I was like, why is Milano still in? That guy out in space, that big guy is just, and I'm like, holy cow, that's Andreessen. So then I bring my eyes back to Joe, and you're right, Jerry. I mean, they took a chance on the guy, local guy, develop him, and he embraced it. And what he's doing on the field does not look like a second-year cast-off kind of guy. He's fit. He fits. I think he fits the role that's needed, like you just talked about. More of that traditional inside linebacker play, brings a little bit more of a body, a little more of a run gap fill rather than slash. And so I'm excited to see that. And I tweeted it out during the game. I just said Buffalo Joe covering ground, because he was covering a lot of ground.
You can measure a lot of things on a player. You can measure strength, speed, agility, vertical jumps, all this stuff. You can even do intelligence tests, right? You can't measure football. You can't fake football, and you never will be able to fake football. And Andreessen's a football player, and he gets it. And it's awesome to watch this, and I hope he keeps playing. But it's funny, and I want to segue into something else here on the show. Kind of your thoughts on this, John. When I look at this team, and we have so many people that were down on the defensive performance, down on the offense, everything's doom and gloom, right? When I looked at this team, especially Wednesday when we went to camp, okay, I noticed something that I thought I had seen, and being in camp and putting my eyes on it validated it. This team, while we don't roll out a 350-pound one technique, or, you look at Spencer Brown, probably the most narrow right tackle in football, right? We got different guys of different body types. But the thing is this, they are all long, they all run, and they are all fast and have agility. And this football team is fast, it runs, it attacks, it's got speed, it does all those things. And to just sit in base is not what they are going to do well. I think that's why we've seen so many rumors and inklings of the Ryan Nielsen situation, where he's coaching up so much 5- and 6-man pressures. When these games are for real, John, and what your thought on this, I truly believe we're going to see a systemic change in the Bills, in that they are going to attack, especially on defense, because to not attack and not use this speed and agility that this team has is a crime. They drafted athletes, and they've got athletes at all positions, and they're going to use them, but they're not going to show it against the Giants on a week 1 preseason game.
You're absolutely right. And if you look in this empirically, right, let's just lay this out as a math equation. The offense, you can't really expect to generate a heck of a lot more points than they have been, right?
Right.
So what has to change? You have to reduce the amount of points that you allow. And mathematically, if you go with what you've been doing and you play that similar, without changing the physical lookup of your entire defense, you're pretty much going to be running the same type of defense, unless you do what Jerry just said. You have to have incredibly well thought out pressure packages, right? And the beauty of that is, if you bring in a specialist like Nielsen, and he has that latitude with Babich, and they can get together, they're right now planning the type of stuff that they're doing against the Ravens. Like next week, they're having a Ravens meeting. What's the package? How are we going to get to Lamar? How are we going to cut off the running lanes if he escapes? So you're able to get this stuff, the ideas, and that's the fun part, breaking out the crayons and the construction paper, and putting more pressure on the offenses. And frankly, I'd rather have my head cut off than be bled to death. So I want pressure. I want to try to confuse. I want to try to pin guys, get guys free, get in there, maybe occasionally get a roughing the passer penalty that's not too egregious. Put a little fear in, get a little fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Bring those safeties down. Let's take some guys apart a little bit. So I agree with you.
And I could be wrong, and I'm sure the stat heads will tear after me if I'm wrong with this, but I just off the top of my head, I don't believe I am. While we led the league in turnovers, takeaways as opposed to giveaways, and led by a considerable amount, we didn't get a ton of negative plays last year like we had in the past. And I don't think this is going to be a defense that thrives on sitting in gaps and playing gap sound football and being the 2-gap type players. I think this defense is going to crank it up, use that speed and athleticism, and try to not only take the ball away, but get those negative plays as well. If you remember, this is a tremendously analytically driven coaching staff. I mean, this coaching staff sucks up advanced analytics. They always have, and they always will. And I think that when you look at this team, they're going to try to get those negative plays, those tackles for losses, tackles behind the line of scrimmage, sacks, however they have to do it. And if they give up some points, okay, I think we're going to slowly see us move away from that death by 1,000 paper cuts, like you said, John. And it's if they get one over the top on us, okay, they did. But we just scored the most points ever in the history of the franchise. We're going to score points again, But if that one time we get home and we get a strip sack and we get 7, or we take it away, whatever, that's going to outweigh just that 13-play drive where we're just getting nickel and dimed all over the place.
That's right, Jerry. I mean, I think about, you can't trade body blows in this league. You got to have an uppercut, an unexpected uppercut where you can get ahead early in the game by 14, 10, 13 points. And you have to have a game-breaking defensive philosophy on occasion that's perfectly executed. And it's risk, right? Because, coaches and everybody gets second-guessed all the time. But you got to be able to make a big risk call, in a point in the game where you think that the result will be so advantageous that you can kind of cripple out your opponent. But Jerry, this was great, man. Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. I love the discussion format than me just coming out here doing it alone. Really enjoyed my time with you this week in Buffalo. I'm looking forward to us playing tomorrow in the Kelly tournament.
Yep.
We're just proud as hell of the Overreaction Sports Network. Please go to overreactionbuffalo.com, where, Jerry, you'll get every article in the country that mentions the Buffalo Bills. We cull all those articles. You're going to see everything you want to read about the Buffalo Bills. That's overreactionbuffalo.com. Thank you to Sahlen. They are, of course, the sponsor of the Off Tackle Show with John Fina. And Jerry, final thought?
No, just looking forward to this week. I'm sure we'll get a lot of on-site Sal Capaccio, whoever's there, who's fighting and who's not fighting in joint practices, because we're at the point in camp, folks, where everybody's irritable. The team just got home from a 11-day stint at St. John Fisher, which, by the way, is nothing. 11 days is nothing. Try 6 weeks. That's a little different. But still, they're cranky. They got home to their wives and girlfriends and everything else, sleeping in their own beds, and now they got to fly out to Illinois to participate in practice against the Bears. So I'm sure there'll be some fights. Looking forward to that, but also the next game, and just see where this coaching staff takes this team progression-wise as we build to week 1 in Orchard Park, Sunday Night Football against the Baltimore Ravens.
Awesome. All right. Well, for me, for Sahlen, for John, for Jerry, for all of you Bills Mafia out there, I'm just going to say, go Bills.
Much love. Go Bills.